Alrighty, good morning everyone. It is Dreaded D, the infamous pirate captain protecting T-Fuel Island. Let's dive into it with a shorter episode this morning. I have a little bit of time before I get this day rolling, but we're gonna have more content later tonight. We're gonna get this Patreon moving. I look forward to seeing many of you in there, especially as we do some token evaluations and we look through some of these projects. Quick note this morning, I wanted to put out a video basically to really get the thinking moving in the right direction. I've been a big fan of Preston Pish and the Investor Podcast for a long time. I think his most recent interview with Michael Saylor is very prevalent to the way that I've been speaking over the past, let's say, I don't know. If you go back in my YouTube videos, it all kind of comes full circle in understanding what is a security, right? What is And that's a piece of why I was hesitant to even come back to YouTube or come back to doing a Patreon, right? It's because we don't know what these products are yet, right? And to speak on them until there is some clarity or some oversight seems premature. But after chatting with some people and discussing, it's like, all right, well, this space isn't going anywhere, at least for the time being. And either way, as we proceed with this, and this was my worry, that something could shift drastically and that could change the entirety of the content of the Patreon or the YouTube, right? But you know what? Let's just dive headfirst into the abyss, right? Why not? It seems like the right time. Seems like everyone's at that point now where a lot of the shakiness has been shaken out, at least for the time being. There's probably going to be more. But I'm looking forward to start building the shopping list, as well as building out some small positions, because these are kind of those times to start seeding those projects and figuring out where you want to allocate capital. So the video I'd recommend that you guys start watching today, or at least listen to at some point throughout your day. It's a longer video, and if you can't do it, we're going to do a summary later tonight, as well as a token evaluation later tonight. And I think that's going to be part of we're going to tinker with the structure, but I think that's what the structure is going to be like going forward. So as well as if you are in the Captain's Division of my Patreon, starting in the next episode, your name, your logo, whatever your membership is on Patreon, that will be blasted out right on the front page of every episode. So if you have a brand, if you have a personal creator brand that you want put out there or shown to be as a supporter or in that higher level division, you will be put out there, obviously by request. If you do not want to be put out there, please let me know and I can change the intro sequence. So all right, let's dive into this thing. Let's take a look real quick. Have a little bit of time here. So episode 1, let's dive in. Let's see if I can get out of this. There we go. All right. So this is the episode here. It's on Preston Pish's YouTube channel here, and it's an interview with Michael Saylor. It's a 3-hour interview, so like I said, it's a little bit long, but we'll dive into it more in depth. I'll give some brief knowledge on it and some takeaways. It's understanding about like why Bitcoin is a mainstay, right? Like why is this thing just so different than all these other tokens, right? With origination, and I think it comes down to the process of origination, and it comes with being the first mover, right? And with intent. Because what I'm seeing with a lot of these projects and a lot of the meetings that I've been in is that what we have here is a form of capital raising that is bootstrapped to an idea that is based off of greed. And unfortunately, that greed or that promoter really gains a lot of power, and it really stifles that decentralization narrative. Now, does that decentralization narrative matter really? It depends, right? Because these applications or these dApps, someone has to build them and they have to be incentivized to build them, correct? Right? The question is, though, is bootstrapping a token, is that a security? Is that really pushing the envelope on the fundraising method, right? And we don't know yet. Obviously, we're still in that. As much as 2013 through 2017 felt like the Cowboys and Indians time, we're still very much in that Cowboys and Indians time. We're still able to invest in these products. We're still able to use DEXs, at least for now. So with a lot of these, though, I'm seeing more and more that the VCs and the vesting schedule is becoming more and more apparent about how these unlocks are occurring. And then, just last week, good example, Seapool, they had a large whale run up the price. And in that process, though, then they ended up unlocking a ton of tokens that were vested. And it was like, okay, so now that you've done this, now you've bootstrapped the price, you've hyped up people, and now you're going to rip it down in front of people's faces. And I see this cycle over and over and over again. In just bad monetary practices, in my opinion, if you're going to be building a long-term community going forward. Obviously, sometimes those actions just fade into the distance as if a good idea is a good idea, those actions can kind of get swept under the rug. Fortunately, though, I like to be cognizant of those actions. I know they're happening. It's just a question of where they're happening, why they're happening, and then making our best judgment on do we actually trust these people who are the promoters of this thing, right? Because without them, those projects aren't in existence, right? So, and I guess that's what makes Bitcoin different, is that there's no real central authority, and that's what Michael Saylor's talking about here. And with that gives immense amount of strength. But I do agree with him where, he explains what Vitalik says, where he says, it allows us to create what we want, our own new paradigm. And the problem is that gives the wrong, if you can constantly change something, right, and have the ability to change it at the whim because you are, the lead or the head of something, some organization, some foundation, is that truly a vote based on actual intent and actual discernment of what's best for the chain, or is that eventually going to lead to centralization via, proof of stake is what we're really talking about here. And proof of stake is something I've talked about previously, and it's something we've talked about with XRP if you go back into some of the old YouTube videos. Proof of stake sounds really great but to me, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that need to be ironed out. Because it is, as Michael Saylor says, it is just redoing the exact old systems that we've already done. Now, does that mean it's not going to work? No, because we've seen that with the fiat system, right? Where you can create these structures within a hierarchy of power, and yes, maybe it's wrong, but a fiat system lasting 90 plus years, or a significant amount of years, and certain securities lasting 20 plus years before finally getting revealed, that's always potential. And I think it comes back to, can you stay solvent longer than people can stay stupid? And I think we saw that too in this last run-up where, I think Peloton's a great example because it's one of my big misses. And I'll discuss that a little bit, where before Peloton's big run-up, I think, or just about, it was getting to $70, $80, right? And one of my friends, he was doing an internship at Peloton in New York, and I was talking with him, and he says, it's great, it's this and that, and I'm going through the numbers, and I'm going through everything, and I'm like, but it's a piece of exercise equipment. This doesn't have the legs to stand on, or the revenues to stand on in perpetuity going forward. And so, I was like, all right, well, maybe, this thing's rallying pretty hard. Maybe I should take out a position. So I took out a position, and unfortunately, I had my face melted off. And the problem was I wasn't wrong, right? But it's the same thing as being wrong. I was too early. That was the issue. People remained stupid longer than I could stay solvent in the trade. And that's equivalent to being wrong. So, on things like that, those are the kind of plays where, leverage or options in any case sometimes is not in your favor. But it's the same with some of these cryptos. These things can stick around depending upon what the narrative is, whatever they want to see happen, longer than what people realize, I think. And I think that gives us a great opportunity here, and why I want to even continue this Patreon is that, because that's been a worry of mine, is that maybe regulation or these will fade or the structure will destroy it. And then the Patreon is kind of like, okay, well, what am I showing you? Am I able to show you newer projects basically as we go? But I firmly believe after that interaction that these kinds of things are here to stay, and I think about it too as a global scale. This isn't one country to one country, because there's always going to be one country that's still allowing it. Now the scale may go down if there is that kind of regulation that comes in, just based on a capital standpoint. But I think at this point the train can't be stopped. So it may be able to be stifled, or may have to change tracks a little bit. And teams will really have to come forward. I think a big piece that is going to come forward is that these teams are going to have to start putting their own token addresses on the chain or on their main website, like with their ENS, Ethereum name service, for that kind of transparency, especially if you're starting one of these. I think that's essential. Because if you don't do that, there's a lot of that stuff going on right now where the friend of the friend is buying massive amounts of tokens off the ICO rip or right after the private sale, and they're basically a placeholder though for the original owner, which is the actual promoter. So we have to be really careful when we evaluate these things and really do a deep dive into the stuff that's on Etherscan, going through like the Theta blockchain, checking these transactions, figuring out whose wallet is who, right? I think that's integral, and I think that's what's great about crypto too. We can figure out who owns what just based on, some casual research and data that's actually out there. Unlike stocks where sometimes things are kind of obfuscated, things are all out there. So we can actually pull real data, and that's what I really like about this space going forward is, and maybe to their own detriment, maybe to the promoter's detriment in a legal SEC case going forward, when you have that kind of level of transparency. And to go and figuring out too, with Michael Saylor's point, I agree with the majority of what he's saying. And I agree that Bitcoin with proof of work is great because it spins the energy problem on its head, because we don't have unlimited energy. Obviously, that problem will change if we ever do get some form of cheap, ubiquitous energy. But at least for now, the way that I've always viewed Bitcoin for the past 6-7 years, or I've explained to people who didn't understand it, was that, the first interaction that you have with people is Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. And I said, okay, that may be the case, but do you realize what Bitcoin is actually doing though, right? And they're like, well, they're doing that so they can get rich. And it's like, okay, that's valid, but what it's done is it's created a game. It's created a game in which people are now monetarily incentivized to create cheap, ubiquitous energy. And by doing so, they've created the ultimate renewable energy game that we've ever seen before in our lives, where now excess energy can be applied and created in capital. I look forward to seeing and hopefully talking about on here some energy plays that are not just cryptos. We're talking of like full circle, the integration of crypto to the mainstream, and seeing how those oil, gas, petroleum, nuclear companies can benefit by participating and pushing this process forward. So there's a lot more under the hood proof of work. With Ethereum moving to proof of stake, I don't know if they did themselves a disservice or not by doing so. I get that it's faster, but now if we look around, right, like all of us that have used Cosmos, we've used Theta, we've used Solana, we've used Polygon, Avalanche. Okay, so now what differentiates it? Obviously, ETH has one valuable component that I think is very important. First mover advantage for one. And then second, they also have all the devs, right? So when you have, I think very important that I think is faded a lot of the time in the understanding, is it's so important to have rich devs with tokens, right? And that's been kind of my argument with Theta for a long time to the team and to other people, is that it's great that we have all these rich, at least in my case, VC people or finance people in the space, but I need to see rich devs in the space because they need to be, and rich whales in that space because they need to be incentivized, right, to work on the Theta blockchain or to work on Solana or to, you know what I mean? If you have a financial incentive to do so, you are going to put a lot of effort into it. And I think that a lot of people that had ETH early on in the early days, a lot of devs, they're financially incentivized to make ETH better. So I think that's an advantage point for Ethereum versus some of these other chains. And obviously we're going to talk about that too going through this Patreon as well. This video is probably going to get posted to YouTube because it's not really discussing any real token. It's more broad-based. I feel like this is a better YouTube video in my opinion. But I think it opens up some ideas for some people, and I think that's important. Yeah. So yeah, is it differentiating with ETH? Why will ETH be the mainstay? Is it going to be the mainstay? We'll have to see. I mean, we're at that weird point where we have to kind of look back to like the 90s and early 2000s and really think about like how I like to compare it to like an operating system, like how operating systems came about. Right, and then how did Windows actually become, or how did Internet Explorer, or how do we move from Netscape? I think that's very important to look at the historical context, because that historical context shows us that we just like crypto in the early days, the top 100 may not even look like the top 100 going in the next year. Right, that's how fast this space changes. It's like a sped up version of historical context. So, yeah, there's some great gems in this this Michael Saylor interview. I would highly recommend you listen to it. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys in Patreon. I think that'll be it for this morning. We're going to be producing more content tonight, and really just trying to provide you guys the best information, the best knowledge. You guys know already I try to do the best I can. I apologize I stepped away for a while, but hey, not the right time. Things were shifting in Theta that I didn't really like, but now I think it's time to come full circle, really dive deep again, and it's gonna be a fun adventure. So yeah, go check out my Patreon. We've posted a couple small things of content so far, but tonight is really the main launch. So, and we'll start diving into some of these tokens and start teaching you guys about how I build my shopping lists, like what is my process when I'm looking at some of these things, and we'll be interacting and talking some stock talk as well going forward, and because they're kind of merging, things are kind of bleeding over between the two sides of these asset classes now, and they're crypto may become a whole new asset class, but I think they're gonna kind of bridge or merge together in a way, and what we think of as a company is going to shift drastically going forward. So with that, I hope you all have a great day, enjoy it, and I will see you on T-Fuel Island, my friends. I'm glad to be back. So all right, let's have a good one, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.